Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, I forgot to set up the meeting last night, so I just sent it out this morning. But thankfully, I remembered before 8 o'clock. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I had it on. Good morning. Thank you. We're going to, for those of you that are already in, sorry, I just sent the link out this morning. I usually create them at night, but man, I was so tired last night. Well, I'm tired today. Taylor, are you as tired as I am? I'm sorry. I'm human, and it's today. I feel like it's gotten to me. It just has
Computer
got.
stuff just takes it out of you. Like staring at the computer all day just like drains.
Yes, staying at the computer, and I mean, I'm fortunate. There are some people who are quarantined and by themselves. I at least have a husband that I like, here, but the whole thing is getting, it's just getting to me. And then I'm trying to, um, have as many meetings with students, as I can and still kind of maintain, like I haven't sanitized my house yet. And I mean, we've been keeping it clean, don't get me wrong, but I haven't gotten the doorknobs, and I'm just like, and I have because of my bad back, I can't do floors. I mean, it's just sweeping and mopping is just very, very difficult on my back. So I have a housekeeper that comes every other week because my husband and I are usually just home in the evenings and on the weekend, so the house doesn't get, well, now that we're both here, I really need a housekeeper every week, but I have no housekeeper because obviously, we aren't coming into homes, and I don't blame them. So I'm like, oh Lord, I just can't take this place anymore. And the other thing to think about is hopefully you're staying out of your cars because you're home in quarantine, but your car is a petri dish. Have you, like the steering wheel, and you go into a store, you touch the door, anyway, we got to not talk about this. I can't take anymore. And then, wait, I'm going to say this. Then they had 190 flights, direct flights from New York to Tampa International, with people leaving New York to come. I mean, I'm sure it's happening all over Florida, but just in Florida, I mean, just in Tampa. So people from New York are coming to Tampa. Of course, they're being told to self-quarantine, but there's no enforcement of it. The Florida governor, anyway, I don't know where these people are staying, but we don't, Florida, I feel badly for New York, but Florida doesn't need to have people from New York coming in. And then we've got no control of where these people are or are going, and are they really self-quarantined? Oh, anyway, we're going to have, you know what? When accounting gets to be the best news of the day and seeing each other with bright and cheery faces at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's a win for me. So today the new topics. The only new topic that we have to cover is the sale of receivables. The sale of receivables, and that's SALE. Because with me being a sailor, I can say sale and it be SAIL, or as my accountant, it's SALE. So the example that we will first work through is on page 365. But before we go through the example, I do want to go over the diagram on page 368. Okay, on 368. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes before I start. I've got 14, I think. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Liam, I really like seeing it. Leighton, did you take a shower this morning?
No, I'm exhausted.
Oh,
I barely woke up.
I'm sure that you are. Because you're working, aren't you?
Yeah.
Where do if you everybody is here, but how are you? So this is only share what you want, because normally we'd have a private. Woo, we got skin showing. Thank you, Liam. Hey, it's okay. We're all in our homes and comfortable. So Leighton, I bet you can't beat what Liam just is doing to us. How many hours a week are you working?
Well, I'm working every day now since this virus thing, because we're one of the only restaurants open. So because we do takeout. So
So how many hours is you're working every day, but how many hours is that?
Whatever 6 times 7 is, 42.
Oh, okay. Are you in a full load in school? Anyway,
I dropped one of my, yeah.
That's way, way, way too many
I
hours.
signed up for an hour of office hours on that website thing.
Yeah, I saw that. Monday, I'll check to see. We can talk about that. Oh, here's my phone. Good. Let's see, because it seems like, I don't think it was this Monday. Okay, it's not. All right, let's talk about that. Ryan, how are you doing? Katone, I saw you. Tanisha, I really like seeing y'all's faces. It makes me happy. I woke up this morning a little.
Sorry, I took a shower this morning. My hair is not ready to be shown on camera.
I understand. I am fortunate that I was born with this wavy hair, and I literally take a shower and do like this, and y'all probably can tell, and that's it. I'm just fortunate that my hair is so low maintenance. Except for me my hairdresser putting the blue in, but so anyway, enough of that. I needed some cheery talk. I try not to watch the news, but I was watching it for 30 minutes this morning, and while I was putting my makeup on, and that 30 minutes I was like, okay, shouldn't have done that. All right, so we're going to first look at the only new topic that we've got to cover is the selling of accounts receivables. remember I said that discounting a notes receivable, we're not going to do. So first, look on page 368. Look on through page 368. And 368, we see that obviously accounts receivable is an asset. And when companies have an asset, they can use that asset in order to borrow money. Remember, just go back to the basic accounting equation. Oh, I'm sorry, we got to get in a laugh right now. Look, needs: stroller, monitor, diaper, trash can. Okay, last night we had a Zoom meeting with my kids and their spouses, just so that we could all touch base, because we're here in Tampa. Our oldest son is in Los Angeles, and he has a pregnant wife that's due in 6 weeks. My daughter is in St. Pete, and then my son is in Chicago. So we're kind of all over the place. So we had a family meeting last night, and my son that's in Los Angeles, they still need, I was still in my teacher mode with having to write on a board, even in a family Zoom meeting. I just, sorry, had to laugh about that. So, all right, so on page 368, we see that, we're going back to the basic accounting equation. Assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. Well, we know that companies have assets, and the way that they get the assets, of course, is by either through creditors or owners. Well, they can also utilize assets in order to borrow money. And accounts receivables are one of those assets that companies can, one, use to borrow money. And then if you're looking on page 368 at that illustration 723, that when they borrow money, that it does not meet the criteria for treatment as a sale. Remember, in order to be a sale, we need to have transfer of control. We learned that in chapter 6. And they're reminding you there about the conditions that will meet transfer of control. So if the financing arrangement does not meet those conditions to treat it as a sale, then that means that it is a secured borrowing. That means that the company has either pledged their assets as collateral for the loan, or they have assigned the accounts receivable as collateral for the note. Now, I assume that everyone understands what collateral is. Just in case you don't, I buy a car. If I don't pay cash for the car, then the car is collateral on my car note. That if I don't pay my car note, then obviously the bank can come and take the car to satisfy the note. Well, if I have notes payable, I can pledge my accounts receivable to the note. If I go and borrow money, I can pledge the accounts receivable, meaning that if the company doesn't pay the note, then the bank can come in and take over their accounts receivable. In other words, their customers would then be paying the bank instead of the customers paying the company itself. The other thing they can do is assign a receivable. And this has to do with more that a specific receivable. You see this quite a bit in car dealerships. Car dealerships, all those cars that they have on their parking lot, parking lot for you to look at, that inventory, the car dealerships don't buy that inventory outright with cash. They have a note with a bank, and they have assigned that note with the bank, the receivable from the customer. Now, I know that you're going to have to pay cash, but think of that inventory would be, instead of accounts receivable, but that inventory is an assigned asset for a note. So just like the inventory can be an assigned asset for a note, in accounts receivable can be an assigned asset for a note. So going back to the car loan, the car dealership, the car, like my husband just bought a car last Friday. He's no more, he's quarantined. I said, Bill, this isn't that you're off and can go out and about, but buying cars. But anyway, the car dealership then, because they would have assigned the car that he had, the car dealership still owes for that car. So they have assigned the car that my husband bought, such that when that car is sold, they're required within a certain number of days to pay the note that is related to that car. Does that make sense? So we borrowed money and from the bank in order to buy our inventory. And I know we're talking about accounts receivable here, but the concept is the same. So they've assigned their inventory. Then when they sell that inventory, they have within a few days, usually just like 3 days, to pay the note that that inventory has been assigned to. So bottom line is that whether you have pledged your accounts receivable or assigned your accounts receivable, there is no journal entry required because it doesn't qualify as a sale. Therefore, the only thing that is required are in the footnote disclosures that we talked about in the chapters 3 and 4 so much, that you would have to disclose in the disclosure notes that your accounts receivable has been either pledged or assigned to the notes payable. So it's just a footnote disclosure. Now, when you look on, does the financing of the accounts receivable meet the definition of a sale, and you see the 1, 2, and 3 that meet the definition of a sale, then that is called sale of receivable. And we do have to do a journal entry because we have transferred control of our accounts receivable to the factor. For some reason, I don't know where the terminology came from. But when we sell our accounts receivables, we call it factoring. When we sell our notes receivable, we call it discounting. So when we factor an accounts receivable, that means that we have sold our accounts receivable and we must do a journal entry. If we have discounted our notes receivable, that means that we have sold our notes receivable. Now remember, I said that discounting or selling our notes receivable will not be on the exam. When you read it, and maybe in the SMART book and that you saw, there's quite a bit of number crunching on that. But the concept and the theory is the same as if you were factoring or selling your accounts receivable. Okay? So look on page 365. And on page 365 is illustration 717. Now, usually I don't go through the illustrations that are in the textbook because you should have read that illustration and understood this illustration. I'm going to, you probably didn't understand this illustration as well. And so I want to go through it before we work a problem ourselves. The first thing that I want to do is, before you read all the information about it, look at the journal entry. Just look at the journal entry. I'm sorry, my mouth is real dry this morning. I took my blood pressure medicine and it. All right, so notice, obviously, we know why cash is debited. Don't even look at the amounts right now. Let's just talk about what is, so we're going to debit cash for the amount of cash that we are going to get from the factor when we sell it. The loss on sale of receivables. It says that the loss on the sale of receivables, and do you see in parentheses that it says to balance? Meaning that that's what we call a plug journal entry, a plugged amount, meaning what does it take to get to this journal entry to balance? Well, I'm going to press the bullshit button on that one, because we don't need to plug a number. We can define what that number is. The loss on the sale of receivables. So on the board, I'm going to put loss on sale. That the number is going to be the combination of the decrease in the fair value of the accounts receivable plus the factor fee, okay, plus the factor fee. All right, and this is the fee that the buyer of our accounts receivable charges us. So we're going to see that actually the loss on the sale is not a plug number, that it is the decrease in the fair value of the accounts receivable plus your factor fee. Now, the debit receivable from factor, what you will see in these contracts is that because accounts receivable, we know that we are not going to collect all of our accounts receivables for two reasons. One is not everybody pays. So there will be a portion of our accounts receivable that we can estimate that is not going to be received. Remember, this would be those same percentages that we will use in this chapter, in chapter 7 for the allowance account. Remember, they've got those percentages that they have based on history to estimate how much bad debt expense we have. Well, that's where the percentage comes from, that based on history, they know or can estimate how much of their receivables they expect not to collect. So when you sell your receivables, you have transferred the risk of uncollectability to the buyer of our accounts receivable. So we're going to see how contracts can be structured to determine who is going to assume the risk of uncollectability. And that is where you see the two different types going back to page 368, where you see the two different types of contracts that can be done when we sell our accounts receivable, and that is with recourse or without recourse. And we will look at the definitions of that in just a minute. I want to continue with the journal entries themselves. So because of the fact that there is the risk of uncollectability of accounts receivable, you will see in all contracts, whether they are with recourse or without recourse, that the buyer of the accounts receivable will withhold a certain percentage of our accounts receivable for a certain time period in order to, because of this transfer of risk of uncollectability. Okay, I'm talking a concept here. Right now, you're going, okay, we'll see. When we start doing the applying with numbers and doing problems, you will see how this works. So the receivable from the factor is the amount that the factor is withholding minus their fee. Minus their fee. And we'll see how this contract is structured. Then we have the credit to accounts receivable. And the credit to accounts receivable should be for, it says there, the book value sold. That means the amount that the accounts receivable is on our books at, meaning not the fair value of our accounts receivable, but the amount that our accounts receivable are actually in our general ledger for, the amount that they're in the general ledger for. So that is a description of the journal entry that we want to be able to quantify. So now with that information, let's go through the illustration 717. I'm going to erase this and I'm going to be writing important numbers on the board. So it's showing where our accounts receivable is $600,000 is the book value or the amount that our accounts receivable is in the general ledger for, was $600,000. The transfer was made without recourse. So let's go ahead and understand what is the difference between with recourse and without recourse. With recourse and then without recourse. Can anybody tell me what is with recourse? I sold my receivables with recourse.
It's when the seller keeps the risk of the bad debts.
Okay, so the seller, perfect, Catone, the seller, which is me, the company, I'm selling my accounts receivable. So without recourse, that means the seller is maintaining or keeping the risk of uncollectability. Good job, Catone. So the seller is keeping the risk. They already have the risk, so they're keeping the risk of uncollectability on the accounts receivable that they're selling. Okay? Without recourse, I'm sorry, I've confused y'all. Stop. I was just defining without recourse, which is what I should be. Transfer made without recourse, and Catone described it properly. Without recourse means that the seller is keeping the risk of uncollectability. I think at one point I may have said with recourse, without recourse. So without recourse, the seller is maintaining the risk of uncollectability.
In the book, it's flipped. It says
Yeah.
with.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just tired this morning. Okay. Without recourse, go ahead. Who's saying this? Ashley?
It says without recourse.
Wait,
when
I'm trying to see who's talking to
it's
me.
Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, thank you. Okay.
It says without recourse is when the buyer assumes the risk, and then with recourse is when the seller maintains the risk. On
Okay.
page 364.
Okay, right. So without recourse, where are you seeing that? Without recourse, sorry, without recourse, that means that the seller maintains the risk.
The book says that's with recourse.
Okay.
It's page 368.
Oh, 360.
723. The one that we were just looking at.
Oh, it does. Oh, right. Sorry, brain fart. I mean, I'm really, really tired this morning, and I am sorry that y'all are getting that. Okay. Without recourse, correct. Okay. Without recourse, and look, I promise y'all, I know this. I'm just tired. Okay. Without recourse, let's start over. Good morning.
Good morning.
Without recourse, that you're correct. The book is correct. Aaron's correct. Catone was correct because that's when I got my terminology mixed up and I knew I could hear it in my brain that I was saying it wrong. So start over. I'm sorry, Liam. All right, so start over. Without recourse. That means that the buyer of accounts receivable cannot come back to the seller for uncollectible accounts, for people that did not pay. So therefore, the buyer is assuming the risk of uncollectability. The buyer is assuming the risk of uncollectability. 368 is absolutely correct. Your tired professor mixed them up. All right. I was just checking to see if y'all were on your toes. How about that one? All right. So the buyer is assuming the risk of uncollectability. So this particular contract that we're looking at on 717 is without recourse. So the buyer cannot come back to the seller for any uncollectible accounts. All right. So the factor immediately remitted cash equal to 90% of the factored amount. Okay. So 90%. So cash received immediately. I'm misspelling. So cash received, immediately is 540,000, which is your 600,000 times the 90%. Okay, the 600,000 times the 90%. I know this is shadowing. I've been working on my lighting to try and fix that, but I will adjust my body in the meantime. So we're going to receive 90% of the $600,000 immediately. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 10%, that's a percent, the 10% remaining is 60,000. Okay, we're going to see how this is an important number coming up shortly. I mean, like in a few seconds. Okay, so we have $600,000 of accounts receivable that we're selling. The factor is going, the buyer is going to immediately pay us 90%, which is 540,000. That means the remaining 10% is 600,000. The factor retains the 10% to cover its factor fee. And the factor fee is 4% of what is being sold. So what is my factor fee? Calculators out, we can get some brains engaged instead of just looking at the number. I know that y'all can do 600,000 times 4%. Notice that it is not the 4% of the 540,000 that I just received. It is 4% of the total amount that I am selling. So our factor fee is $24,000. So our factor fee is $24,000. Now, the last bullet says, after the factor is collected cash equal to the amount advanced to Santa Teresa, that's the seller, plus the factor fee, the factor will remit the excess to Santa Teresa. So what they're saying is the 10% that they did not remit minus the factor fee, they're going to remit at a later time. It's a lot of words to just say that. But continue reading, and it says that the Santa Teresa has a beneficial interest in the transferred receivables equal to the fair value of the last 10%. What is the fair value of the last 10%? I find this last bullet, the wording of the last bullet, to be very confusing. And that's why I wanted to go through the illustration, because if you went through this illustration and you were like, what are they talking about? I'm here to clear that up. And we'll do it in I'm getting better as I'm working on this, my tiredness. I'm getting the accounting invigoration going here. So what is the fair value of the 10% remaining?
60,000.
What does it say that the fair value is? How much are they going to remit? You see, it says which management estimates to equal 10%. So they're going to remit the fair value of the last 10% minus the factor fee. And they're saying that management is estimating that the fair value of the last 10% is 50,000. Now, what is the book value of my last 10%?
60,000.
60,000, good. And they're only going to remit 50,000. So that means that we have, remember I described that the loss on the sale is made up of the decrease in the fair value plus the factor fee. So they're saying that there has been a $10,000 decrease in the fair value of the accounts receivable. So we had a decrease in the fair value of 10,000. The way that I would have worded this now would be that we sold $600,000 of accounts receivable that had a fair value of 590,000. That to me is a better wording of what's happened with this. Does everybody understand that? So we sold $600,000 of accounts receivable. And I know, because the way that they described this, that they're only going to remit 50,000 of the 60,000 because the fair value is 50,000. So that means that that the fair value of my $600,000 that I sold was 590,000. There was a $10,000 decrease in the fair value of the asset. All right, so we know we've got a decrease in the fair value of the asset of 10,000. We know that our factor fee, what did we calculate our factor fee to be?
24.
24,000. So we already know that for our journal entry, the loss on the sale of my receivables is going to be $34,000. Okay, let me adjust my screen. If you want to, I don't know if it helps y'all, if you've got this in your notes, or if you want to take a picture with your cell phone. If you want to take a picture with your cell phone, I will get out of the way to get my shadow off, and hopefully that's a clear picture if you want to do it. Anytime you want to take a picture of the whiteboard as we're going through, just let me know and I'll get it as shadow free as I can. Okay. So now we are ready to do our journal entry. And I'm not going to write the journal entry on the board because you can see it, but we'll refer to the numbers. We're going to debit cash for the 540,000. The 90% that we received on the date that we sold our receivables. We're going to debit loss on factoring of, or loss on sale of receivables for $34,000. The $10,000 decrease in our fair value plus the $24,000 factor fee. So we know we need to debit loss on sale of receivables for $34,000. Now, this receivable from the factor, remember the factor has said that this 50,000, excuse me, that this 60,000 that I had remaining has a fair value of 50,000. Has a fair value of 50,000. They're going to subtract their factor fee. So instead of the company writing a check for the $24,000 factor fee, the buyer is just going to withhold it when they remit the remaining 10%. Okay? So if I take the fair value of the remaining receivables, the 50,000, minus my factor fee, what amount do we get? 50 minus 25, 26,000? Please check my math today. Y'all can see it. I'm done. I may have to ask I don't drink coffee, but I may ask my husband to make me a cup of coffee. So 26,000 is the receivable from the factor. The fair value of the receivables remaining to be collected minus that factor fee. Okay? when you look at the very bottom, it's in small print as an asterisk. It's just showing you it's showing you what would happen if they did not withhold a certain portion of it, if they did not withhold the 10%. Okay. All right. Now let's work a problem. And you would have think, I was going to do this last night, and I mean, I just couldn't. I watched TV last night, and I started a series. I don't normally watch series. I started watching, oh shit, I can't remember the name of it. Designated Survivor.
Oh, good show.
Is it? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I just started watching that. I'm in season 1, but I just needed a head to go out someplace. So has anybody seen, let's see, uncollectible, notes receivable, non-interest bearing, assigning. Okay, look at exercise 723. Look at exercise 723. And go ahead and start working exercise 723. I am going to pull up the solution. I don't think I have the solution to this one uploaded. So while y'all are working on it, I am going to I'm sorry that I'm not better prepared, but I know that this was the only, I felt like I had a break last night, and that we were just covering this topic, and then the rest was whatever questions y'all had for the exam. And I will upload this solution, but we're going to be working it now. Okay.
Which question is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's exercise 723 on page 386.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm ready. Sorry, I wanted to get the solution. And I'm a disaster this morning. Sorry about that. Okay. So how are y'all doing? Yeah, most of y'all are still working on it. Liam, you got it done? Cool. And Tanisha and Ryan and Layton and Miss Pham, how are y'all doing? I can't see. Are y'all still working
I'm
on
trying
it?
to work it out a little bit, but
Okay.
In the example before, can you explain me why the revenue is 10,000?
I'm sorry, say that again. My printer was making noise.
In the example before, can you explain for me why the revenue is 10,000?
Right, so the 10,000, so you're asking me to explain the 10,000 in the illustration we did?
Yeah.
The 10,000 was the decrease in the fair value of the accounts receivable. Remember, the 10% that was remaining was 60,000,
Yeah.
but they told us that the fair value, so the book value was 60,000, but the fair value was 50,000. So there was a decrease in fair value of $10,000.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, now I've lost. Oh, here it is. Oh, okay. Good morning. Hold on just a second. Bill, can you get coffee with cream, lots of cream and a yellow apple? I'm dying. Handsome husband's gonna fix me a cup of coffee. Yay. All right, so let's go through this. Okay. So, did anybody want to say what journal entry they did, or does anybody feel good about what they did?
I feel good. I think I got it.
Okay, good. All right, Taylor, what did you do?
I debited cash for 54,000.
Perfect.
I debited the loss on sale for 2,200.
Perfect.
I did the receivable from factor of 3,800, and then credited accounts receivable for 60,000.
That is perfect. Very nice job, Taylor. Okay, so who got something different? Give me the reactions. Give me a thumbs. If you've got something different, give me the clap. That means, whoa, I need help.
Clapped.
So either give me a clap or a thumbs up. Clap, I needs help. Thumbs up means I got it. Don't be, okay, we got the thumbs up. You can do the thumbs up. You see down at the bottom where it says reactions. Okay.
Oh,
You see down reactions? Isn't that cool? Oh, cool. All right. So got some that need some help. Tanisha, Ryan. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, good. Okay, I can see your reactions even though I can't see your face. All right, so let's go through it. Taylor, do you want to explain it? Are you comfortable explaining it?
I'll try my best.
All right, well, I'll come in and help and others can help. I seem to be
Okay.
tongue-tied until maybe I get some coffee.
So for the cash, I did the 60,000 multiplied by the 90% because that's what you remit.
Right, so they're selling 60,000 and they are retaining 10%. So they're retaining $6,000, right? So the amount of cash received is the 54,000, which is the 60,000 times 9%. Oh God, where am I?
No, 90%.
90%. It was 0.9. Okay, this coffee, and it has Louisiana chicory in it. So this is coffee from New Orleans. So it ought to just, get me going pretty good here. All right, so the 60,000 minus the 10% is the $54,000 cash. All right, Taylor, go ahead. I'm here. I'm present.
Okay. And then for the loss on sale, you do the decrease in the fair value. So I took the 10% of the cash of the 60,000, sorry, and that gave me 6,000. And I subtracted it from the fair value of 5,000. That gave me 1,000.
Okay.
And then I added the factor fee, which is 2% of the 60,000.
So the 10% remaining is the 6,000. And what did they say the fair value of that 6,000 was, Taylor? You're doing a great job. It's me that's trying to.
Shut up.
Pardon me?
Do you hear that noise in the background?
Oh, what is that noise in the background?
That's my bird.
Oh, is that you?
That's my bird.
Oh, your bird. That's.
I couldn't hear what you were saying. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yes. Okay. So the 10% remaining book value is 6,000. We had 60,000. 10% of cash that they gave us is 54,000. So the book value of what's remaining is the 6,000. And what did they say the fair value of that 6,000 was?
5,000.
Right. So the fair value is 5,000. So as Taylor said, that means that our decrease in the fair value is 1,000. Is 1,000. Okay, go ahead. Finish.
And then for the factor fee, I did the 2% of the 60,000 because it said that there was a 2% fee.
Right. So 2% of 60,000 is how much?
1,200.
1,200. So my factor fee was 1,200, which is, as Taylor clearly, as Taylor said, the 2% times the 60,000. So we know that the loss on our sale is going to be $2,200. That $1,000 decrease plus our factor fee. Now, this was a without recourse. So the buyer has assumed risk. And then, so how did you determine the receivable from the factor?
I did the fair value minus the factor fee.
So the 5,000 fair value minus the $1,200 factor fee gives us the amount of 3,800, which is your receivable from the factor, which is your receivable from the factor. Okay. So for those of you that had questions from Taylor, let me get my big head shadow out of the way. That's where the numbers were derived from if you want to look at the board. So for those of you that had questions on it, how are you doing now? So I don't want to point out those that had a question on it, but so for those of you that did have a question, what was your stumbling block? What was the area that caused you the?
I wasn't sure how to calculate the factor fee, but I understand now. It's the 60,000 times the 2%.
Right. It's the book value of what you're selling.
Right.
Times the factor fee.
Okay.
I mean the factor percent.
Right.
The factor percent. All right, and now Ryan.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay, so you understand where this journal entry came from?
Yep.
Okay, now let's take a look at exercise 724. And exercise 724 is the same as 723, the same company, but instead of doing a contract with recourse, without recourse, this is one with recourse. And with recourse means that the buyer can come back to the seller for any accounts receivable that aren't collected. Remember, with recourse, the seller, have I gotten that right? The seller is maintaining the risk of uncollectability, okay? So because the seller is maintaining the risk of uncollectability, we could have a liability to the buyer for the amount that is not collected. Okay? So because the buyer has recourse, so with recourse, they have recourse to come back to the seller, which is me, the company. They can come back to me for any accounts receivables that are not collected. So now what we're going to see, I'm going to erase this. Now what we're going to see is that our loss on our sale is the decrease in fair value, plus the factor fee, plus the estimated bad debts. Or what we estimate, there's another reason that accounts receivable cannot be collected, and that would be not only for they may not pay, but they also could return. Remember, we've got sales returns, okay? But so the amount that we estimate that we're not going to collect, and instead of saying bad debt, because you will see here that it does not go into bad debt expense, it actually increases your loss on your sale of receivables. So the loss on the sale is the decrease in fair value, plus the factor fee, plus the estimated amount not collected. collected, or I really should say in proper grammar, collectible. Okay, so when you have a contract that is with recourse, the buyer has maintained the risk of uncollectability. Therefore, we're going to have a liability to the seller. We are also going to have the estimated, this is a dollar sign. So the estimated amount that we expect not to collect is going to equal the loss on the sale. Okay, it's going to equal the loss on the sale. All right. So go ahead and work 724. And when you look at page 365, illustration 718 is the illustration of how we handle factoring or selling accounts receivable with recourse. The first one we did was without recourse. What journal entry, looking at page 365, what journal entry, looking at the journal entry, what new account do you see in the journal entry?
Recourse liability.
Good, recourse liability. Good, Daniel. We see recourse liability. And the recourse liability represents the liability that we have to the buyer because they have recourse with us for any uncollectible accounts. Now, this is an estimated amount, obviously, just like the allowance for uncollectible accounts is based on estimates. So the amount that we anticipate will not be collected then represents a liability to the buyer. Okay, so work exercise 724. Okay, y'all ready? Liam, you want to share your work with us? Or you feel comfortable enough? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Sure. So I did cash debit of 54,000.
Okay.
Loss on receivable. I put a debit of 5,200. I wasn't sure if that was right.
Okay, you're doing good.
And then
Wait, what did you debit cash for?
54,000.
Okay. All On this one, it says, read the last sentence on this one. This one, the contract was set up a little differently. So read the
Sorry.
last sentence on the, no, that's okay. This is the learning process because I bet everybody did 54,000.
52,800 then?
Good. Nice job, Liam. So we're going to debit cash for 52,800 because they said that the bank charges a 2% factor fee, and that amount is going to be paid at the start of the factoring arrangement. So instead of withholding the factor fee from what they're going to remit to us later, the 10%, they decided to withhold the factor fee from the first cash payment, the 90%.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I have loss on receivable of 5,200.
Okay, and the loss on receivable of 5,200. How did you calculate that amount?
The recourse liability was 3,000 plus 2,200 from the what would have been the receivable from factor 5,000 minus the what would the original factor fee have been?
Okay, so let's start off. What was the decrease in our fair value?
1,000.
Good. So the decrease in our fair value was 1,000. And what was the factor fee?
2,200.
2,200. And then the estimated amount that they expected to be recoursed, right? That the buyer would come back to them, the amount that they expected not to collect. And because this is with recourse, that we expected that 3,000 of the 60,000 would not be collected. So the estimated amount that they expect not to collect is 3,000. So what does this
6,200. Right. That's it.
right, this is 6,200.
Shouldn't the factor fee be 1,200?
Oh shit, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna say we're 1,000 off here. The factor fee is 1,200. All right. I was relying on, okay, Liam, so the factor fee, all right, so let's go through this. I am going to share my screen with y'all. Okay, so let me, all right, so now I want to go back into my Zoom. I want to share my screen. All right, can everybody see the solution?
Yes.
All right, so let's just get this cleared up now and talk about these numbers. So the debit to cash of 52,800 is the 90% of the 60,000 minus the factor fee. And the factor fee, 60,000 times the 2% is 1,200. Okay, so the 54,000, which is the 90% of your 60,000 minus the 1,200 of factor fee, minus the 1,200 of the factor fee. Okay, then Liam said that our loss on the sale of receivables was 5,200. And the 5,200 comes from we had $1,000 decrease. We had oh, y'all can't see the board. You had $1,000 decrease in the fair value, plus we had a $1,200 factor fee, plus we had the amount that we expect the seller to come back to us that we did not collect $3,000 of the $60,000. So the amount that we expect not to collect of $3,000. So when you add up the $1,000 decrease, does everybody have this written down, the solution that I have uploaded or taken a picture of it or done whatever? Because I want to stop sharing the screen. Okay. So when we look at the board, we had a $1,000 decrease in fair value. We had a $1,200 factor fee. And then we had the $3,000 that we expected to come back to us because this was a contract with recourse, which sums up to that loss on the sale of receivables that Liam had talked about. Then the debit to the receivables from the factor. Liam, how did you get that 3,800?
Oh, you got 5,000 instead. Well, 3,800 was before, would have been like subtracting the original factor fee. So I guess I just added back.
Right. So what is the receivable? So our receivable from our factor is 5,000.
Yeah.
Because we're not subtracting the factor fee. Remember, the factor fee in this contract was to be taken from the first installation of money that the company was getting, the right up front. So the receivable from the factor is now the $5,000, which is the fair value of the 10% remaining, right? It is the fair value of the 10% remaining. So our receivable from our factor is 5,000. Now we've got a credit to this account, recourse liability. Obviously, it's a liability. It represents our liability to the buyer because we anticipate that the buyer is going to come back to us and say, you owe us $3,000 because $3,000 of the $60,000 was not collected. So because the contract was a with recourse contract, then I've got that recourse liability to the buyer. And then of course we have to credit accounts receivable for the $60,000, the book value. Okay, Liam, really nice job on that. The only correction that Liam had to make was that last sentence where the factor fee was taken from the first 90% instead of what they're going to remit later. They went ahead and took the factor fee out immediately. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's all there is to, I say all there is, that is the selling of receivables. Again, discounting the notes receivable, just the concept is the same. The calculations get much more complicated because of interest, So that finishes chapter 7.
Dr. Bostic?
Yes, sir.
Could you please go over where we got the receivables from factor for the exercise we just did, 724?
Okay, in 724, the receivable from the factor is 5,000.
And the loss on the receivable is 5,200, right?
And the loss on the receivable is 5,200.
And then we would credit refund liability for
the amount of the, go ahead. Do you see in the problem where it says that at the second to last sentence, it says Mountain High, who's the seller, Mountain High, oh my, it must be in Colorado. Y'all get it? Okay, we get it. So Mountain High anticipates a $3,000 recourse obligation.
Right. So
that is your recourse liability.
The 3,000.
Right, because that's the amount that I expect that the buyer is going to come back to me for.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so the recourse liability comes from that.
Perfect. Thank you.
You want me to share screen on the solution again?
I think I got it now. Thank you.
Does anybody else put your thumbs up, especially for those that aren't? Okay, I don't see where anybody wants me to put the solution up again. I will post the solution onto Blackboard if it's not already there. Okay, the topical coverage for the exam, I'm hoping that for getting ready for class today, that you were able to spend time going through doing your end of chapter problems and going through the chapter 5, the time value of money, practice problems that I uploaded, the chapter 6 practice problems that I uploaded, and then the chapter 7 practice problems that I uploaded. Going through those, which ones were you like, I need explanation on? I saw the solution, but I would really like to discuss it. And while y'all are thinking about that, I'm going to send out my first question to y'all. And these.
Wait a minute, my computer just shut down. So.
Pardon me?
No, my computer just shut down. So please don't post any questions until it's turned on.
Oh, okay. So your computer shut down. I can do a lot of share screen. So I can bring up whatever problems that we need to bring up with the solution, and then we can go through it together. But Ms. Pham, you can see I'm gonna put the polling question out and let's see what y'all can do. Now this polling question, all 3 of them today come from chapter 6. So let's see where your brain is. Go back into chapter 6 and let me send out the first question. And there are 14 all in here, and I need all 14 of you to vote, or this is that participation attendance. Extra credit coming in from Dr. Bostic. Woo! All right, I have, good, here we go. All right, I still have 6 of y'all that still need to vote, or you will be considered not present. Okay, I'm closing it in 10 seconds. Okay, good. I've got all of y'all have voted now. And let's share the results. We got 50-50 here. At least you knew, I say at least, that's a terrible way to lean to. You're correct. $400 of it would be revenue. But now the remaining 800, what would that be? Well, the key thing to look for in this, has Mary already paid the 1,200 or does she still owe for the 1,200?
She
Paid, right?
paid.
Okay, so just answer so let's answer the question. Mary, I said Marie, has Mary already paid the 1,200 or does she still owe the company for the 1,200?
He's already paid.
She's already paid it. So when Mary paid, when she signed up, she paid. What journal entry did the company do, the Chocolate Ceramics Company, what journal entry did they do when Mary paid $1,200?
Debit, cash, credit, deferred revenue.
I've got background noise somewhere. Okay, so she debited cash for 1,200, and Miss Pham, what did she credit?
She credits the revenue for 400 and defer revenue for 800.
Okay, well, when she first signed up, she signed up and she paid. So has Chocolate Ceramics earned any revenue when she first paid the $1,200?
No.
No. So what journal entry did she do on when she first paid on June 1st?
Debit, cash, credit.
Cash for 1,200 and credit.
Deferred revenue.
Good job. Deferred revenue. Okay. So the whole $1,200 from the original journal entry that was done, the whole 1,200 is in deferred revenue because she paid on June 1st. The company had not earned any revenue. So debit cash, 1,200, and credit deferred revenue was done on June 1st. Now we are 2 months later. The ceramics company has earned 2 months of revenue, June and July. So how much revenue is being earned each month?
$200.
Good, $200. So she has earned $200 of revenue. So what journal entry would be done on August 1st?
Debit revenue for 400, and then credit deferred revenue 800.
Okay, why don't you, how do we increase revenue, Katona?
Credit.
Okay, so, and how do we decrease a liability?
Debit.
Debit. So what would our journal entry be on August 1st?
Debit deferred revenue, credit sales revenue.
Good, for how much?
Deferred revenue 800, sales revenue 400.
Okay, does that journal entry balance?
No.
No. All right, so let me, I'm going to stop sharing this solution, and I am going to create a Word document. Better yet, let me do an Excel document. All right, and I'm going to share a screen. All right, so what we have is on June 1st, the journal entry would have been to debit cash for $1,200, and we would credit deferred revenue for $1,200. All right. So that's on June 1st. On August 1st, so on August 1st, the journal entry would be how much of the 1,200 have we earned? I think we all agree that that's 400. Okay. So I would debit deferred revenue for 400 and credit it doesn't matter, sales revenue or service revenue. This would be actually a service because we're training. So service, because we didn't sell inventory. So we would credit service revenue for 400. Now, what the question is asking, this is where it's important to carefully read. What the question is asking at August 1st, what is the balance of revenue and what is the balance of deferred revenue? So when I look, I know that my balance of my revenue is $400. That's the only journal entry that I have for revenue. My deferred revenue has an ending balance of $800. We credited it for $1,200 on June 1st when we originally received the money. And then we debited it on August 1st, showing that we had earned 2 months of the 6 months of revenue. So if I have a $1,200 credit to revenue, a deferred revenue, and a $400 debit to deferred revenue, what is the ending balance of my deferred revenue?
$800 credit.
Good, an $800 credit. Okay? An $800 credit. So that is the reason. I don't know if I can, let's see, polling, share results. So that is the reason that B is the correct answer.
That's domestic. I just log in the computer again, but when I answer the question, it's on my iPhone. So could it count it both on my iPhone or on my name?
I don't, what am I doing? So on your name, on iPhone.
It's just iPhone.
Right, it's just iPhone. What do you want me to do?
I mean, my computer just shut down when you post the question, so I answer through my iPhone. So could you count my extra credit goals?
It recorded it. I've got, 14 of y'all present and then 14 answered. Okay. So the answer is I had $400 in. The balance of my account would be $400 of revenue and $800 of deferred revenue because I understand those two journal entries that would have been done on June 1st and August 1st. Okay, so I'm going to go into my share screen to show these were the journal entries that were done on June 1st and August 1st. Is this what you had missed, Ms. Pham? And you can take a picture of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is how we determined the answer. We looked at the journal entries that would have been done on June 1st and August 1st in order to determine what the ending balance of my account are. Okay, You can take a picture of that because I'm gonna stop sharing and move on. Okay? All right. That was just to remind y'all about chapter 6 questions, just to get all of my polling questions today aren't just for attendance, but it's also for practice. Okay? So that was a chapter 6 one. Now, with going through the problems that you had, are there any problems that we need to work together because you looked at the solution and were like, okay, I understand the solution, but an explanation would help me better understand?
Exercise 517.
Right. So exercise
517.
Sorry, exercise 517. That's a time value of money one.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any in chapter 5? All right, with respect to chapter 5, remember the probability, and I have not done the exam yet because it's online but the probability of you knowing how to calculate bond price is pretty high. So are y'all comfortable with looking at the time value of money problems with calculating bond price, bond selling price, the present value of, calculating the present value, whether it is a bond with a premium or a bond with a discount? All right. The other thing is, remember, we did 2 or 3 examples of where you had to make a choice between what, I gave you 3 options or 4 or however many it was of, I want to buy this building and I have different choices for financing. You calculate the present value of each one and then determine which one is the best option. Are y'all comfortable with that? All right. So with respect to chapter 5, let's look at exercise 517. And exercise 517 that is a bond one, I'm sorry. So exercise 517, page 268. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate it in Excel. Obviously, for this exam, you've got not only your notes and your books, but you also have Excel as well as your calculator available to you. Okay, so I'm going to do it in Excel. You do it in your calculator so that you can see both ways that it is being done. So I'm going to go to sharing the screen again. And we know that we need to know what N is, what I is, payment. PV is what we're looking for, and future value. And then is it in the end mode or beginning mode? Now on bonds, they're always going to be in the end mode. These are ordinary annuities. It's an ordinary annuity, and we will be paying interest to our creditors at the end of each 6 months. So I know that because this is in the end mode, you know how to put your calculators in the end mode. In Excel, you will have it as 0. Now, exercise 517 says that the bond is a 15-year bond. Now, how often are they paying interest?
Semi-annually.
Semi-annually. So how many semi-annual payments do I have?
30.
30. Okay. 15 years times 2, semi-annually, 2 of them a year. So 15 times 2 means that my N is 30 payments. Now your I is your semi-annual market rate. Right? So N is the number of semi-annual payments. I is your semi-annual market rate. Remember, we always are going to discount based on the market rate. And what was the market rate for this bond?
5%.
5%. So I'm going to put in a formula here so that I don't have rounding problems. I know it's 2.5, but you know, what if the market rate is 7.33? All right, so it will be equal to 5 divided by 2, and I get 2.5. This is your percent, and I want double spots. So this would be 0.05. Remember, in Excel, you need to use the 0.05, where in the calculator, you would have sorry. Okay. So my semi-annual market rate is 2.5%. In your calculator, you would put in 2.5. Now my payment is the actual payment to each semi-annual period using the stated rate, okay? Using the stated rate. So your payment is how much interest am I going to pay every 6 months? And the amount of interest that we pay every 6 months is based on the rate that is stated in the contract. So that is reason that the stated rate can either be called the stated rate or the contract rate, because it is the amount that is stated in the contract. Okay. Now, what is the face value? FV stands for future value. And our future value, we're going to calculate this, but let me put in the numbers that I know so that I can use formulas. What is the amount that I'm going to have to pay at the end of the 15 years? What is the face value of the bond?
200 million.
200 million.
Okay, 200 million. The 200 million is the face value of the bond. My payment is going to be the face value times the stated rate. the face value times the stated rate. And my stated rate, semi-annual stated rate is, I'm misspelling stuff here, sorry. What is the semi-annual stated rate? Well, what is the stated rate in the contract?
6%.
Good. So it's going to be equal to 0.06 divided by 2. I'm going to change that to a percent and move it to decimal places. Now we could easily do that one in our head, but what if it was the stated rate was 8.25%? Okay. So it is the state in your calculators. What I would do, I know that 3% is easy to do in our head, but in my calculator, I would do 6 divided by 2 equal, and then it shows you the 3, and then hit I. That way you don't lose any of your rounding that you could have. Okay, so my stated rate is 3%. So my payment is going to be equal to the base value of the bond times my stated rate. So every 6 months, I am going to pay $6 million to the bondholders, my creditors. So I'm going to pay $6 million to my bondholders. So every 6 months, they're going to get $6 million. When you calculate the selling price of a bond, we are calculating 2 things at one time. We are calculating the present value of the face value of the note, the present value of a lump sum, that 200 million. We are also calculating the present value of the $6 million annuity, because the present value, which is the selling price of a bond, is your present value. The selling price of a bond is equal to the present value of the lump sum plus the present value of your annuity, your interest payments. Now, fortunately, we can do both of those at the same time in our calculator and in Excel. So those of you doing it in the calculator, because from a time-saving standpoint, instead of going into Excel and then going back to the exam, you may be using your calculators. So practice this in your calculators to see if you get the same answer. So we're now ready to calculate the selling price. Equal PV, open parentheses, and my rate, the semi-annual market rate, my N, the number of semi-annual payments, is 30. My payment is 6 million. My future value is the 200 million. And then the type is 0, which is what we put in for ordinary annuities, meaning in the end mode. Close my parentheses, and I get a formula problem. Where is my formula problem?
You have a period instead of a comma.
Thank you.
By before.
Yep, there we go. And we get the amount of 224 million Tanisha, were you the one that asked the question?
0 at the end? Or no? Or B7? Because like in the formula, like the last number was B6. Or am I wrong?
No, you're right. Go look at, if you look at the formula you just did for PV, you put B6 twice instead of B7 as the last for like the ending.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thanks. Okay. Whew. All right. So what you should be putting in your calculators is 30 for your N, 2.5 for your I, 6 million for your payment, 200 million for your future value. Now, I don't have, do you have the solution for exercise 517? Was it uploaded?
Yeah.
Okay, is that the answer?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So 220 million, 930, 292, 59 is the present value, is the selling price of your bond.
It's like a little off, like in the solution, it's like $1,000 off. Is that?
That's because they use the tables, and those are going to be rounding issues. When you would think that you wouldn't have rounding issues that are that big of an amount, but 200 million is a large amount. You are not using tables. You are either using your calculator or Excel. So this would be the answer that I would expect because we're not using the tables. Okay. Everybody good on that?
Dr. Bostic?
Yes.
Would this be, is this being sold, this is being sold at a premium, right?
Okay, that's where I was going next. So good, Katone. The next question that I was going to ask is, when we started this problem, because the market rate was lower than the stated rate, is this bond going to sell at a premium or a discount?
Premium.
So this is important to understand. So if the market rate is less than the stated rate, then a bond is going to sell at a what? Premium. Okay, a bond is going to sell at a premium. If the market rate is greater than the stated rate, then a bond is going to sell at a what?
Discount.
Discount, good. The bond is going to sell at a discount when the market rate is the stated rate. So when you see problems on the exam, wait, is it almost class time? Shit. If the market rate is less than the stated rate, premium. So because it's important that when you look at on a bond problem, first assess, did I expect my present value to be greater than the 200 million or less than the 200 million? And because the market rate was less than the stated rate, I knew my answer had to be greater than the 200 million. Okay? Everybody good with this one? All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And that was chapter 5, exercise 717. Now, chapter 6, I'm going to send out a polling question. Can everybody go to about 5 till 10? because I teach at 10, but I could easily, you know, move into that. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. A polling question, and I want to send out this question. Now, oh, I'm sorry. The whole question isn't moving. I ran out of, there's a limited amount of space. So the rest of the question is using the most likely approach. Sorry. I was supposed to let y'all know. So the rest of the question is, what is the amount of revenue for the first month using the most likely approach? Okay, sorry, that, so I need, now I've got 15 of y'all in here instead of 14. So if you want full credit, let's get some. And again, you can do a screenshot of this and just remember that using the most likely approach. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it in about 5 seconds. Okay, I'm closing it. I still have a student that hasn't voted and or answered, and 64% chose the correct answer. I am going to share a screen with y'all. And here is the explanation as to why B is the correct answer. Okay. The most likely is that the contract amount would be 62,000. So the most likely is that they would receive the 2,000, and which means that the transaction price for this contract would be 62,000. The 1,000 times the 6 plus the 2,000. If you take 62,000 divided by 6, I'm not in Excel right now, so what is 62,000 divided by 6?
Is it 62,000 or 6,200?
Oh my God. I'm sorry. So 6,000 a month. So 6,000 plus 2,000 is 8,000, right? So 1,000 for 6 months is 6,000. Plus the 2,000 means that the transaction price is 8,000. The transaction price is 8,000. When I divide the transaction price by the 6, you get the 1,333 each month. Okay? Sorry, my screen does that every now and then. Okay. Oh, this is aggravating. Where did it go? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and then I am going to share the screen again. Okay, so is the 1333 each month? Sorry about that. There is another polling question that I would have sent out. Obviously, this is way too long for the space that I have in polling questions. So take a picture of Bob the Builder, and so that you can work this problem for additional practice. All right. I need to go into the 10 o'clock class. On Monday, I have set up office hours where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot from 9 to 12. What I'm going to do, I anticipate that on Monday, after your weekend of studying, of going through all the practice problems that I have uploaded, that some of you may have questions. So what I'm going to do is I have set office hours from 9 to 12. At 1 o'clock, I am going to open up 2 hours of open office hours. So from 1 until 3, I am going to send out the link for the meeting, and you can come into the meeting and leave the meeting. Did everybody get that problem? You can come into the meeting and leave the meeting at any time that you want. Okay? You can come in. If I'm in the middle of explaining something, then wait until I've done that, and then you can ask your question and we can go through it. So I've got individual slots, but then I'm going to have 2 hours of just open meeting where I'm sitting here just answering any questions that you may have for the exam. I will send out the link to that meeting. Obviously, I'll make an announcement on Blackboard. So it will be from 1 until 3 that I will have open office hour meetings where I'm just sitting here waiting for students to come in and ask questions. Do any of you have problems with the 1 to 3 time period? Okay, so I will do that, work a lot of problems, but on Monday, we'll have a chance to do that.
Dr. Bostic, I had problem with my computer. So what happened if when I do the test, my computer shut down again like today? What can I do?
Okay, do you have any place, send me an email, let's discuss this. I've got to go teach another class in 2 minutes. So you need to get to a place where, is there, do you have, I know we're quarantined, but is there a place where you've got Wi-Fi that you can get to?
Okay.
Okay, so send me an email and we'll discuss this further. Okay, Ms. Pham? So send me an email and I will email you about what we can do.
Okay, okay, thank you.
What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna do the 10 o'clock class. In class recordings, I will also upload the class recording from the 10 o'clock class in case we go through different problems for review for the exam than what we did in the 8 o'clock class. So I will upload the recording from both y'all's class and the 10 o'clock class so that you get a double dose of what happened.
Okay.
Okay, is that a good thing? All right, peace out. Tuesday, y'all will be taking an exam. Remember, I need to have webcam open for everybody. I'm going to be watching you on webcam as you take the exam. So those of you that aren't typically showing your faces, I need for you to, show your face, or it will be considered an academic integrity violation. Okay?
Okay.
See y'all on Monday, I'm sure, for office hours.
Have a good weekend.
Y'all do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.